All right, welcome, Nathalie Jackson. Nathalie guides individuals in overcoming personal challenges, reaching new levels of growth by breaking through limitations and delving into their inner worlds through powerful healing practices such as fire walking, Sun Door certified, and Shadow Work International certified. As a dedicated holistic practitioner and healer, she offers a comprehensive approach to wellness and transformation. Nathalie is the visionary behind the 12 archetypes of a powerful woman wheel, the Women Unveiled Mystery School, Unveil the Mystic Feminine Oracle Deck. Ooh, that's exciting. And the 12 Archetypes program. She is also the author of the spiritual fiction novel, All the Light and Dark Things. Welcome, Nathalie.
Thank you. Yay, I'm so grateful to be here. It felt like such an honor, Sherry, just to be invited. And, as I was reading all the list of names, I'm like, oh, I know her. And suddenly it kind of like landed in me like I am part of those crones and those that are moving into the elder years now and to be invited into the circle, into the council, it feels good. It's tender in me. There's a part of me that's still like, ooh, am I really worthy of it? Can I step into that in a good way and do my elders justice, those who walk this path before me? And so
Yes,
I want to
you
talk.
can. I'm going to give you the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sherry. Great. So I want to talk a little bit about the joys and the wonder that can come in our aging years. There's a big misnomer in our culture that as we age, life gets a little bit more dull, or we don't have the capacity to do this, or maybe sex isn't as good, or maybe I don't have all the strength and all of these skills that I identified with for so many years might be less accessible to me as I get older. And so I want to be one of those ones. I want to be one of those women that looks you in the eye and says, life just gets better. And there's ways that we can fuel that fire, and there's ways that we can inspire one another to like see the goodness in our aging, changing bodies, and see the gifts that come from all of these years that we've kind of amassed and accumulated wisdom and stories, and all of this has come to us and maybe moved through us throughout the years, and here we find ourselves maybe having something to offer somebody else. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have really juiced me up, because my talk here is about blossoming into your sacred wild self. So for me, the sacred wild self has really been a journey of learning how to keep the spark alive, learning how to like fuel my inner passion and desire. And in those moments or weeks or months or maybe even years when I'm in the valley of darkness and sadness and loss, how then do I light my own fire again? How do I come out of that valley and hold my own torch and keep walking in a really courageous way? And so a lot of the work that I've done, Sherry talked a little bit about shadow work, and fire walking is a really beautiful, igniting kind of ritual. I'm a ritualist and a ceremonialist. And the piece that I thought I would bring in today, because it feels really important to these elder years as a woman, has to do with sacred sexuality and eros. Because for me, eros is life force energy. And it isn't something that just is there. It's not like it's just always there. When you go into a new relationship and it's really juicy and you're like, wow, and all the chemicals are firing in the brain and everything is like juiced up, right? Well, that sensation of eros, that's really alive when there's newness, when there's something that's sexy and exciting and it's an adventure and there's risk and the eros is there, right? We can feel it. And what happens when life keeps on going and things happen and relationships maybe come and go and there are endings, and how then do we fuel that fire of that eros and that life force energy within us? So it feels really important to like be that for one another, to teach one another how to do that, because there are really good examples of women in their 70s, 80s, 90s who still have the fire of determination and purpose and life force that runs through them. And I want to be one of those women. I want to model my life based on some of these women that have inspired me. So I want to talk about sacred sexuality because it feels like, oh, it's so important in the um, in the perseverance or the persistence or the sustainability even of life and life force in us. It's a generator of life force energy. And oftentimes it's neglected or overlooked, or what I've really learned in the world of shadows is that all of our shadows show up in sexuality. So it tends to be one of those areas that just is fraught with darkness and maybe difficulties and maybe some obstacles to overcome. And so it can kind of just dwindle and be put to the side and be like, oh, maybe I'll look after that next year. Maybe when I'm 60, I'll start thinking about that. Or not quite yet. I'm not quite ready for that. And what I really hope to inspire each of you here today is that to bring that into focus will change your inner world. It will change the vibrancy that runs through you and the aliveness that you have access to. And it's a big part of sustainable, I was gonna say the goddess of like feeling the energy and the fullness and the wholeness of the goddess within you is stimulated from that sacred sexuality. Okay, so I want to throw you some things that you can do, and we'll do a little process towards the end, and hopefully somewhere in here it's going to fuel a fire in you. That's really my hope. So sacred sexuality, it's a bit of a buzzword, it's talked about quite a bit. What does it mean to actually have sacred sexuality? What does it mean to embody that? And from what I've learned and been taught and really started to embody over the last 10, 15 years of my life is, in order to make your life sacred, you must become the storyteller of the sacred. If it doesn't start with you and the spells that you're casting with the words that you send out into the world, then sacredness doesn't magically just come into your existence. It actually emerges from you as the storyteller of the sacred. There's this really beautiful story from the Ringing Cedars of Russia, the Anastasia books. And this man, goes to Anastasia and said, I'm kind of tired of my relationship. She's kind of dull. She's always in the same patterns, and I'm not in love with her anymore. And so Anastasia goes, great, okay. I will grant you your wish. What is it you wish for? Well, I wish to be married to a goddess. So she looks at him and she goes, your wish is my command. Stay with your wife for the next 6 months and treat her as if she is the goddess, and then I will send you the goddess. And so we probably all know the end of that story. He comes into his home, he starts to see some goodness in her. He starts to really feed back to her the beauty he sees in her. He brings her some flowers. And suddenly the goddess emerges in her. And then by the end of the 6 months, he's like, my wish has come true. I am, in fact, married to the goddess. And I will, that story is so beautiful and profound for me that I extend it into all of life. If you want to make your life sacred, then start to see the sacred in it. Look for the sacred, look for the gifts and the beauty in another. Look for the little magical moments. Like it's almost like suddenly, like you put on these glasses, right? And they have a filter on them. And the filter starts to pick out the sacred in the world around you. That's how you start to be the storyteller of the sacred in your own life is by going and looking for it, because that which you look for is exactly what you will find. Once you have eyes to see, you will see. And so bringing, making your life a sacred offering to divinity, to God, goddess, whatever it is you believe in, begins with the perception, the glasses that you put on. And maybe it isn't the sacred you're looking for. Maybe it's joy you're looking for. Maybe it's ecstasy. Maybe it's peacefulness you're looking for. Put those glasses on and open your eyes to where it already exists. And you will start to see it more and more and more. And so it begins there. It begins with the lens that you see the world with. And the next step in this blossoming of the sacredness and the wildness within yourself is to take a good hard look at yourself. Teresa really touched on this, like looking at your past, feeling what's really authentic inside of you, and asking yourself, what stories do you tell about yourself? When you're standing naked in front of your mirror and you see all of you, there's the manifestation of divinity in this beautiful body. What's the first thing that comes to mind? What are the first thoughts you have when you look at the color of your hair, the texture of your skin, the firmness of your breasts? What happens with your belly? What's the first story you tell yourself when you're looking in the mirror? These stories are imprints and programs that we have from childhood, and some of them are life-giving. Some of them really feed and fuel this beauty of then moving into our elder years. And some of them just plain don't. I mean, we all probably have a few of those of like, oh, wow, I really don't like aging skin. I really don't like the color of my hair as it's going gray. Oh, like I remember what my mom used to say about getting older, and she was right. And da, da, da. We all have those programs. And those programs, like one by one, as we really hone and step into the bigness and magnificence, if you will, of you becoming an elder in your communities. As we step more and more into that, part of the job, if you will, is actually to unprogram, is to unravel all the ways that we've been told that, as we age, we get invisible. We're no longer significant. We're not as important in the world anymore. Our voice doesn't matter. Da, da, da. All of these things, one by one, need to be pulled out. The threads need to be removed in order to fully discover what's beneath all of that. Because our essence, our eros, that like moves through us, is always there when we pull away everything that's blocking it. And those imprints, those childhood imprints, are a really big part of what blocks us from aging gracefully, from, stepping more and more and more into our greatness and our mastery. So, I'd love to hear from some of you if there's some programs that you're aware of, especially as you imagine yourself standing naked in front of the mirror. Oh yeah, there's a doozer. What are some of the programs that's like unconscious that just show up like that, and it almost is like you don't have control over them? For me, for the longest time, it was like I'm not good enough. That was a big one. Or I'm not worthy of receiving love. That was another big one for me. If some of you have some of those programs that you're willing to share, and I know it can be vulnerable, go ahead and share them in the thread, just so we can start to kind of see, yeah, like there are commonalities in our stories and our experiences as women. Yeah, I'm unimportant. That's a big one. I've heard, I've worked with a lot of women around voice. My voice doesn't matter. Not worthy of abundance. Yeah, not wise enough to speak. Yeah, there's the voice one. These are very real programs in us, and they operate unconsciously. So the more, again, I'll reference Teresa's because that's just such a beautiful segue. The more we bring awareness and tune in and listen to your inner world, the more we can start to pull out the threads that just aren't conducive to the woman you want to be as you step into your 40s and your 50s and your 60s. You get to decide. Really, truly, you get to decide what qualities you want to enhance and work towards and master even. That's up to you. Not to say it doesn't take any work, because goodness gracious, it does. It takes effort and it takes intention and like a solidity within the self of knowing that you're worthy of having the life that you want. All of that is true. And pulling apart the subconscious programs is a really good place to start. So unprogramming what you've been taught. And along, your body, so our relationship to our eros and our sexuality begins in our body. And then kind of the next step out from that is intimacy. So how, what your relationship to intimacy is, whether it be intimacy with you and yourself, intimacy with another, intimacy with children, with animals, with the land, with the elements. It's that capacity to be present to something, to listen to it, to be heard, and to have this flow of giving and receiving. All of that is part of the expansion or the uncovering, really, of Eros within you. Okay, so that's the first one. What is your relationship to yourself, your inner world, your inner programs? And then, we kind of go after we kind of do this little inner work, we look a little bit outside of ourselves and we start thinking, okay, now what are my relationships to others? Now, if I'm going to bring sacredness into my world, then it's up to me to see the sacred in another, just like that story of the man and his wife, right? To start to actually look at another and maybe see things you didn't see before. Maybe, how many of you, when you look at your partner, if you've been in a partnership for some time or maybe a new partnership, how many of you look at your partner and reflect back to them the goodness that you see in them? Right? Like maybe something they do all of the time. It's just inherent in who they are. And how often have you actually looked at your partner and said, thank you for that, for the way that you bring me food in the evening. Thank you for the way that you wake up and you smile at me first thing in the morning. Like I really can feel your love. I know I'm loved when I'm with you. So when we start to hone in of the sacredness of life, then we're looking for the sacredness in another, and maybe there's even some courage within the self to be able to speak that to another. I think we've kind of normalized criticism just a little bit too much in our culture. It's easy, almost acceptable to criticize one another. Less acceptable, if you can even imagine, less acceptable within our culture to praise one another. It's like there's stigma around that. And I would like to just rip that stigma right out of there. Because the more we praise one another, the more we lift each other up, the stronger that we are together. And as a collective and council of women, and holding torches, using our voices in really good ways, as we do this together, it's important that we lift each other up. Truly, there's just enough criticism and gossip going on in today's world. What if we saw the best in one another, erred on the side of assuming someone's good intentions, positive intentions? What if we erred there? What if we defaulted to, there must be more going on in this person's life right now? I'm curious. I'm curious what else is happening here in this person's life. And actually do the opposite of like the tall poppy syndrome, where we chop, 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 chop that tall poppy and actually make space for more poppies to grow and become taller and taller and taller. So seeing the sacred and other and lifting each other up is a really, really, really big part of it. And the third key that I want to offer to all of you is making conscious time and effort for that eros to be honed in you, to be uncovered in you. And that, sometimes we have to kind of sacrifice something in order to really feed the seed of intimacy and connection and presence with our beloveds. Maybe we sacrifice the latest Netflix series, or maybe I sacrifice doing this like course for myself because I know that like this relationship in my life is really important, and I'm going to give it time. I'm going to give it loving attention. I'm going to give it the fuel it needs to continue to blossom. I've been married for 26 years to the same wonderful, incredible man. And we've gone through our ups and downs, let me tell you. There have been mountains and valleys throughout the years. And always we come back to this place. What do we need now? How can we fuel the fire of our togetherness, of our communion, of our union with each other? What needs to shift now? How can we bring more attention to the things maybe that got a little neglected? And it's a constant reminder for us. We drift away and then we come back again and we remember. It's like a forgetting and a remembering. And so my hope as you're listening to my words today, I'm hoping that you're going to start to feel kind of the transmissions of eros and juiciness and fire come alive in you. And also I hope to inspire in you this piece around the ebb and the flow, and how there is a natural ebb and flow to everything in the natural world. And we as wild, raw humans in these physical bodies, we're part of the natural world. And it's important to, first of all, not shame ourselves when we kind of ebb and we forget and get a little confused or foggy. And remind ourselves to flow again and come closer and do the things that start to fuel that beauty, that sacredness from deep within ourselves. All right, so honoring that ebb and the flow, and making a choice, sacrificing certain things to stand for what it is you really want. Right? Like I really want to get into my 70s and 80s and 90s being strong and vibrant and still inspiring to people in my life. So what does that mean? It means I need to look after my body now. I love my body. I work out. I feed it really well. I spend time listening inside here. I nurture the relationships that are life-giving in my life. And those are the ways that I'm preparing for those elder years in a super conscious way. So the ebb and the flow and making conscious choices, even if it means shedding, sacrificing a few things, pushing a few things aside to be like, no, this is actually what I want. This is what I want, and I'm willing to go for it. And I'm willing to do whatever is required inside of me to get there, to live that way, to be that woman. Okay, we're going to go right into the ritual because I know we're a couple minutes behind, and this is a short little process. So it'll take us 2 minutes and then we can move to closure. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. Close your eyes for a moment. Just ground yourself in place. Really feel the seat beneath you. And imagine your connection to the earth, deep, deep, deep beneath you. You are a part of her. So I'm going to invite you now to enter into a forest, an ancient forest, and might be a little bit familiar to you, or maybe not, maybe it's brand new. And you see a path open up before you in this forest, and then it kind of takes you deeper into the forest. And somewhere in this forest is the sacred wild version of you, the unabridged, untamed, raw, real, authentic version of you. Go and find her. And notice as you're looking for her, even notice instinctually what it feels like to walk along the forest floor, to hear the sounds of the forest, to feel the wind in the air. Allow all of those wild instincts to guide you to her. And as you come closer to her, you might start to notice kind of some of her wildness. Just see what it is that you notice first. What does pleasure look like in her body? What does untamed nature look like? Free to speak and say whatever needs to be spoken. What does that look like? And as you observe this wild version of self, I'm going to invite you to step right into her. And now let your feet hit the ground as this wild version of you. And feel instinctually what it's like to move through this forest without restriction, without constraints, with nothing holding you back. You might feel like running, like howling, like leaping over mountains, like swinging on the stars. Just let your wild self be wild, even for a moment. And as this wild, sacred version of you walks the path, how would you walk in your life? What would be different in your life if you chose from this place? If you let this aspect of yourself be your guide, what would be different? Take that in, whatever messages come to you. And anchoring that in your body, and then slowly coming back to here and now. And I'm going to really invite you to take some sort of action step that comes from that sacred wild self. Because I do truly believe, truly, like at the heart of who I am, I believe that this is what's necessary right now. We need fierce, courageous, raw, and authentic women standing for what it is you believe in, speaking what needs to be spoken, loving in whatever ways you want to love. This is what's needed. In a world that can be so frustrating and scary and disheartening, we need to remind one another of what it feels like to have that fire alive and awake and fully accessible within each other. And then speak that to one another. Lift each other up in those moments when we forget. I'm sure we've all had those moments where we kind of forget who we are, forget why we're doing this. So the wild, sacred you knows why. It knows why you came into this world. It knows what it is that is meant to emerge from you, is meant to blossom from you. We just kind of need to get out of its way. And yeah, it can be scary because it means maybe saying the things that you've been holding inside. It means maybe even taking a risk that you've been too afraid to take for years. So what is that thing? What is that risk? What is that word that needs to be spoken? Or dance that needs to be danced? Or painting that needs to be painted? What is that in you? That's how we emerge from this point of like transition as a civilization. We emerge by blossoming, not by constricting and getting more and more and more kind of lost in the stories and the programs and the blockages and the pain. We emerge by actually transcending the pain and doing the things that we're afraid to do. And that force, that energy, you know, I call it the goddess, you might call it something else, that divine feminine energy that's just bursting, waiting to explode from each one of us, that energy is going to help humanity move forward. Yeah. Mm.
Woo! Wow, you guys feel that? That was like so good, Natalie. Like so good. You are so embodying this message like more than I've ever seen. It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Right? No, Joanne says, Natalie, so good. You know, we are the connectors, right? As women, this 40 over 40 summit, we are the inspired leaders. Like, thank you for that massive activation. So good, so good. So, yes, we are over time. Yes, all other speakers don't worry about it. We'll just give you that extra 5 and then we'll just have a little bit shorter lunch. So, Natalie, I want to just take a moment to have you share your free gift.
Absolutely. Yeah, I created a whole little kind of a workbook to help that, like with prompts and with inspirations to help that emergence of that wild sacred self. So I think it'll be a tool then that each one of us can use to really step into that part of self. Mhm.
Awesome. Thanks. So that link should be in the chat for you shortly. And then your VIP gift. What is that?
Yeah. Well, I've really been enjoying offering people free short sessions to just fuel the fire. I think we're in a time right now where we need support. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I'm giving this to people. I'm giving the support to really as a reminder to keep on going.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Make sure that you upgrade to VIP for Natalie's really generous gift there. You know, there's so much going on, you know, for all of us. And I know everyone we have on here, you know, takes when they take that time to just go, I'm here for you. And I'm, you know, going to share my knowledge, my wisdom, my gifts, all of that. And really giving that time. That's so powerful. So thank you for that beautiful VIP gift. So if you want to take advantage of VIP, link is in the chat. Natalie, thank you. What a gift.
You're so welcome. Good job, Sherry. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to bring in our next